Welcome to the morning call. My name's David Linton, and today's edition comes to you from Sydney. And it's Australia Day, which means that markets have been closed here, and it's also India's National Day as well. So, two markets in the East closed. But of course, there's lots going on, and it's just coming up to 6:30 in the morning in the UK and 5:30 in the evening here in Sydney. I actually leave here tomorrow to head to Singapore, where I'm working with clients for the next few days. Now, the big story is really that we're seeing some currency intervention, the dollar falling away there. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, you really see that downside target that was given on Friday just very quickly met this morning. Now, the rumor is that this is the Fed intervening with the Japanese currency, which is weakening the dollar. But the key thing is, anyone who watched my LSEG big calls for 2026 knows that my first call was that we would see the dollar falling quite significantly this year. And there's lots of things happening, of course, that are playing into that. So we look at the euro, we're seeing the euro kicking to multiple highs here. And in fact, if we look at the weekly chart on the euro, that's now back to 2021. So we're seeing 4.5-year highs there. So really quite some significant moves, and we are a smidgen off closing at those levels. Now, the big story was the Japanese yen. That is, well, the dollar is down nearly 1% against the yen. You can see that big move there. The 10-minute chart actually gave quite a good target, and we got a downside target on the 60-minute for further yet. So this is not yet over, and there's fears about what's going on in Japan, and that's impacting the dollar. So we are seeing that. You see sterling, that target again activated on on Thursday afternoon, and we've gone there very quickly. You just can't ignore the price targets. And of course, you can get these targets on TradingView, on lots of different charts on TradingView. Is silver. So you don't have to use them on Updata, but I find that I can move around Updata more quickly. I'm running here on LSEG, but Updata runs on dozens of different data services, including LSEG, Bloomberg, and many, many more. So, but you can use them on TradingView or on Bloomberg. The choice is yours. So we're seeing sterling looking very strong there on the 60-minute chart. On the daily, we're not yet making new highs, but we've got big upside target there as well. So that's going to be quite key. Now, Bitcoin, this has been really very interesting as well. A lot of attention going away from Bitcoin with everything that's happening in precious metals. We're seeing these downside targets that were met. We're seeing a bit of a price collapse here. And we're seeing there on the daily target, that's quite key. And again, you can look at these in TradingView. The choice is yours, so it's totally up to you. And then if we look at the 60-minute chart, we can see we have these downside targets. Got a little bit of a flurry this morning, but we are below the cloud, so you do have to take that into account. Now, the US market, the futures have been about 0.5% down. They're improving slightly this morning. The Nasdaq future is down a bit more. We've got some very big reporting coming this week from Microsoft, Apple, etc. So that's going to be really interesting to see how these tech results are taken in the market. We've got the future and the Nasdaq down slightly, and if we look at the actual cash market for the Nasdaq, we are still waiting to see if we can activate this upside target. Bearing in mind that the high point was October, this is a market that is underperforming. Seeing the DAX down very slightly, the DAX future down 0.16% this morning. So not very dramatic. All eyes on what's going to happen in the US. Japan down 2%. There's a lot of impact there with the yen, so that's going to be quite key. But we are seeing that having an effect. And if we go to Japanese bond yields, of course, this has been the really big story of late. If we look at the Japanese 10-year, we see that we are actually just pulling back a little bit on the yield. But realistically, that trajectory, those targets have been met. And if we look at the weekly, we can see we have got some potentially very, very big targets. So it's still a big concern. And the 40-year, we're seeing targets much higher as well. US markets, the yield also falling back there, so that's quite key, but we have activated this upside target. We're pulling back to the activation level around 4.21%, but the reality is that target is in place and activated, and on the 30-year it's been in place for longer, and you don't go to these targets in a straight line. That's the key thing. So really quite key there as well. So coming back to some of the other markets, we talked about the tech stocks producing results this week. We saw on Friday some quite good recoveries from Amazon. Microsoft was up 3%. In fact, Microsoft was really one of the star performers. If we look at the Dow, it was actually the best performer on Friday in the Dow. And so we did see quite a bit of a flurry there, but we really did see also big moves on Intel. That fell 17% on Friday, so that's really quite interesting, that fallback. They're pulling back. If we look at the 60-minute chart, you can see just a very harsh pullback, having met the targets. So the really big thing is, are these tech companies going to disappoint this week? That's what we're really looking for. Nvidia made a bit of a recovery as well. We were up 1.5% there on Nvidia on Friday. We still have failed to make a new high, and we do have this downside target hanging over us. A move through 170 will not be good for Nvidia, and we've got this upside target that's not yet activated, so that's going to be quite key as well. So coming back to the majors. Of course, the big star has been Alphabet. That has got another upside target that is not yet activated. If we make a new high, this is the best performing bank stock at the moment. We make a new high, we activate a new upside target, and of course you can go to the 60-minute chart as well and see that we may have to fall a little bit before we rise. That's the whole point of looking at the different time horizons. So coming back to Apple, this is probably one of the worst Mag 7 performers, and we have moved below the cloud. All eyes are going to be on their results this week. Will they disappoint? The chart has got a little bit of a disappointment already built in, and you can see these downside targets on the 60-minute chart were met. So really quite key. Remember, you can do these on your Bloomberg or on TradingViews. Choice is yours. Microsoft, even though we had a good Meta also very interesting. We see waiting for results this week as well. But if we look at Microsoft, up 3.3% on Friday, but heading towards the downside target. So that's really quite interesting. And we have hit those downside targets. They were reached, and a new little upside target that was reached. Waiting now to see where we go next, so it's going to be quite key. Brent crude, just take a quick look at Brent crude. That has actually just kicked up a little bit. If we look at the medium term, not yet activated this upside target, still potentially bearish, and bearish on the weekly. We've got quite a lot of work to do on Brent crude before that chart looks bullish, so that's quite key. The big one, of course, was US nat gas. And that rocketed last week. It's up another 16% this morning. We've gone from $3 to $6 on this US freeze, the deep freeze that's happening all across the US. And we had these upside target there on the daily. These upside targets were all given along the way, but if you're trading in US gas, you want to be looking at the 1-minute targets. And I'll be putting out my morning call for energy clients later this morning. So in about an hour and a half's time. So really quite key there that we saw this big move on gas. Now, of course, all eyes on precious metals. Gold above 5,000. So, that target being met. We've got new short-term upside targets for gold. So you've just got to follow those targets. Silver, we see here on silver, we've got, again, upside targets met. So that's quite key. We're hitting at 109 there. And platinum has also been really rocketing, and those upside targets met quite quickly as well. When we look at the daily chart on platinum, we've got a very big upside target still in train. Remember, these targets are all derived from Point & Vigor, all automated. Just hit a key on your system. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.